Anyway, that does remind me, though, of what Apple's... There's been a couple headlines recently about what Apple's may be going to do, which we see these all the time.
Yeah.
But these headlines are about the iPhone. One of them is about Apple potentially making their own cellular, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth chip, which would replace the different chips that they buy from Qualcomm and Broadcom, etc. It's an Apple-made chip that does these things. And then another was about like them making their own screens, I think. Custom displays for phones and watches, which, if you don't already know, right now, Apple buys Samsung displays for the iPhone. Every iPhone is a display made by Samsung, basically. Yeah. And so as Apple continues to take back parts of their machines, we saw how well Apple Silicon did for Apple, because now they don't depend on Intel chips anymore. This is like the last few breadcrumbs of completely owning the entire pipeline and supply chain for the iPhone and not being dependent on anyone for any parts of the iPhone, which is good for Apple.
For now.
And we'll see if there are potential downsides to that and how that works, but that means they have a lot of control.
Yeah. There's a great Nerdwriter video called like Why Apple Needs Samsung. And it's about the fact that so many of the companies that you think about every day, their main revenue driver is not necessarily their products.
Oh, yeah.
It's the fact that they are the best at one thing and they sell everyone else like the B tier version of their best thing. So they give Apple all their actually best screens because Apple's willing to pay a premium for them and they don't really care because they make so much money. Sony, the IMX sensors that are in like every smartphone
that you know has a Sony sensor in it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they don't really make any money at all on Sony smartphones.
Yeah.
You know, so if Apple switches to a completely island-based approach, that's like it could be great for their supply chain until they hit a snag and then all of a sudden the whole thing crumbles. Yeah. Tim Cook is a supply chain guy, so I assume he knows what he's doing.
That's what makes it so interesting. I think sometimes I hear about like we were talking with Shen about this. I don't even think it was on the podcast, but we'll casually drop like, oh yeah, I remember that part that we were trying to get for, and they were sort of really limited, so we ended up dual supplying it. We got it from 2 different OEMs. And I'm like, oh yeah, you can just like get 2 of the same radio from 2 different companies and hopefully they work about the same. And sometimes that works, or sometimes it becomes like a huge deal. You know, people don't want the Exynos Samsung phone.
Yeah.
They want to make sure they get the Qualcomm one because they're such different phones now. So you have to be careful about supply chain stuff. And if you get everything from one supplier, that's a lot of dependence on that working every time.
I remember this happened to, I don't know if it was an iPhone or of like a OnePlus phone or something, where there was some sort of silicon lottery around either RAM or storage. And it was like, this phone's storage is half the speed of the other OnePlus 6 that you could have randomly got. And you don't
check your serial number to figure out which one you got.
Steam Deck just did something similar too, right? With the fans on it.
Oh, right.
The cooling system was essentially, some of them were being affected and louder and getting affected by like magnets in the back and stuff. And we've seen screens in the past too where it's not the same device, but wasn't it a Pixel and a Pixel XL had 2 different screen manufacturers, and one had like a severe shift, like green shift on it.
And people would always literally find like, oh, I'm having problems with my Pixel, it looks different. And then eventually enough data shows up on Reddit that you can sort of figure out like, oh, if you have the serial number that ends in this, or if you have the model number that looks like this, then you got this supplier for your screen versus the other one. Sometimes you never notice these dual supplied things, and sometimes it's a big deal for the object. So yeah, Apple, I guess theoretically with this is reducing that risk. For all we know, they have had multiple suppliers for parts in the past, but Tim Cook's a wizard and we never notice these things. But Apple controlling it all, it's good for Apple.
Yeah, it's good for Apple until they hit a supply chain snag and then they have no one to fall back on.
Yeah.
But
I kind of want to make a video like putting all of this, like structuring this, because I think it's really fascinating how much we don't think about the supply chain behind the product that you buy and use every day. Like we think of the iPhone as like the thing Apple made. Oh, Apple's screens are better than these other people's screens. Well, it's like there's a complicated relationship there. That's a longer story than just the screen.
Apple doesn't even make it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what actually
Foxconn
Samsung screens are Foxconn parts, and they're actually giving you the best ones because you'll pay them the most.
Yeah, which is also funny because like Sony makes all the sensors for everyone's best cameras, and then they made a phone and it has one of the most difficult to use cameras and not the best camera experience. I think that's why I was so ready for, well, that was the funny part about red hydrogen.
Yeah.
It's because Red makes cameras.
Yeah.
And what did they do with their camera? They bought an off-the-shelf Sony sensor. And it was a bad camera.
Yep.
So, yeah, we'll keep an eye on this. Obviously, Apple's not going to... Well, I was going to say Apple is not going to tell us in their next keynote what they change suppliers on, but maybe they do make it... They'll make like a big deal about... They'll say something like we made these
Apple
innovations and that like streamline the process of our chips and blah blah blah. They'll say it, but I think it's up to us to keep an eye on how that actually affects the iPhone.
I think this also in here says that the target was 2024 but could slip until 2025, so it might not be something we see
for a little while.
Yeah.
I feel like the chip shortage was just like a wake-up call to them, and they were like, we need to get our own stuff in line for the next time this happens.
Even before the chip shortage, like
the
every
bill to
problem
Samsung.
with an Intel MacBook Pro
true.
for so many years was like in the background. I'm sure every year Apple's like, I can't wait to get rid of these guys. I can't wait to get rid of these guys.
Sure.
Well, it was also like we talked about when Google started making tensor chips. It's like once you hit scale and you recoup your R&D costs, you can actually charge so much less because the amount of like licensing fees and like upselling that like Qualcomm is doing.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Insane amounts of money.
The price of your gadget depends on the price that you get from your suppliers.
Yeah, and
if you're able to do your R&D, get this crazy scale, and then lower the price, they could lower the price of the iPhone.
You mean increase profit
more
margin.
profits, exactly. It means more profits for
You
Apple.
sweet summer children.
For a second, I was like, lower price.
I like
for
how
the iPhone?
everyone collectively was like,
that's
more money.
just
in
more
their
money in their
pocket.
pockets. But that's that's something we'll keep an eye on. It's maybe worth a video. Let me know in the comments if it's worth a video or if you want it to be structured in a way that you could share with
should
your
cram it in a
parents or
short.
something. In a short?
60 seconds.
Lord, I've never spoken that fast. Hey, thanks for watching this clip. I'm now going to outro this clip as Clippy would on a clip.
What are the hands you're doing? Are those clippies?
Clippy.
Well, it would kind of be like a paper
It would
clip,
like
so,
like this.
yeah. Whatever paper clips. It looks like you're trying to watch a clip. Would you like to hit the like button or comment or subscribe to the channel you're watching to make sure you see more clips when they come out? Here, I'll show you the button. It looks like this. Now you'll find it somewhere else on the page. Thanks. Bye.
Oh, spot on.
From what I remember, Clippy sounded exactly like that.
Hell yeah.